Even if you're not going to tell me how to get out of a lesson.
Good afternoon, class. Today we are going to look at money and banking, as most of you suggested. But let's start with an activity to start the lesson. Could you list some banks in Uganda in the chat?
Big. Sigame peleke big.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we can begin our lesson. I'm called Teacher Mildred. I'll be taking through money and banking. And it's the most familiar topic that most of you use in our daily life.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
Okay, today we're going to look at the most familiar topic about the concepts we use in our daily life, and that is money and banking. Most people, when we talk about money, they refer to paper notes or the coins, but actually money refers to anything which is generally acceptable in payment of goods and services or in payment of debts. We're talking about money. We don't necessarily mean only the present form of money today, the notes or the coins. It could be an object as long as it's generally acceptable as a means of exchange or in settlement of gifts. For example, back then when we used to use commodities or goods during barter trade, the goods were the medium of exchange. So it was also considered as money since it performed the same functions of money. So money is a legal tender. And when I talk of a legal tender, what do I mean? A legal tender refers to money which by law must be accepted in the settlement of debt and payment for goods and services within the country concerned.
ako kali kakojo kabugingo bakuba omwana kati wali mukubabo baali bamanyi nti bugingo era yinza kuba baatuna bulungi nnyo ne bamala nga bugingo asikajjawo.
Please mute your microphones. I was talking about legal tender. For example, every paper note in Uganda, every paper note we use in Uganda has a word legal tender just below the word Bank of Uganda. If you have a paper note, you can actually see it. For example, here, the 2,000 shilling note, it has legal tender for 2,000 shillings for Bank of Uganda. It's just below the Bank of Uganda. So this means that this note was generally accepted by everyone in the country. In the settlement of debt or a medium of exchange. That means that this 2,000 shilling note you see, you find in Kampala will be the same note you find in Lira, Gulu, Mbarara, or Kabale. And every currency in a particular country is a legal tender. What do I mean by currency? Currency refers to the coins and notes in circulation in a given period of time. For example, in Uganda, we have the 50,000 shilling notes, the 20,000, the 10,000, the 5,000, the 2,000, the 1,000 notes, the 1,000 coin, 500, 200, 100 coins. They're the ones we use as our currency. Money in circulation. It consists of notes and coins in circulation plus facilities which perform the functions of money, but which are not money. For example, the bank draft, the checks, and the treasury bills. I hope you have all seen the bank drafts and the checks, how they look. Here I was talking about the bank drafts and the checks. They can also be used as a medium of exchange, or they can also be used in the settlement of debts, in payment for goods and services. For example, a check and a bank draft look like this. If you've never seen them, that's how they look. Dennis, Dennis, please help us and erase what you're writing on the board. So let's look at the evolution of money. Before the invention of the paper note, right now we have all economic transactions could take place on the basis of the barter system. This is where commodities were exchanged for other commodities, or services for services, goods for goods, or sometimes goods were exchanged for the services. And this was the earliest form of exchange. And for its success, there had to be a double coincidence of wants. What do I mean by that? For instance, for someone to exchange with another person, you must have what they want and they should also have what you want. And barter trade had its advantages and its disadvantages. Let's look at the advantages of barter trade. Our barter trade saves the scarce foreign exchange, or it reduces the balance of payment position. Balance of payment position, it means the difference between a country's receipts from exports and the country's expenditure on imports. We say the country's expenditure is favorable when the country's receipts is greater than the exports. But when the expenditure on imports is greater than the country's receipts from exports, then the country is experiencing a balance of payment deficit. So by barter trade, since no money was involved like currency, it reduced the balance of payment position. And the second point, it facilitates trade among small countries. This enables such countries to avoid trading with the more developed countries, which sometimes exploit them. The developed countries would exploit the smaller countries and they would take the imports and exchange them for minor commodities. So barter trade reduced on that exploitation since the trade was among small countries. And then it allows a degree of specialization. A country specializes in production of those commodities which can be used in exchange for other goods that it doesn't have. That means that for a country, it would specialize in cotton, and the other country would specialize in another commodity, let me say in mining of gold. So that created specialization. And another point, it expands the range of the market. This is because trade doesn't involve the use of money. Therefore, countries would look for nations with what they want. With what they have and what they want. I hope you've understood that part. And then for barter trade doesn't experience the range of inflation. This is because there was no money involved for the exchange of goods and services. Then the disadvantages of barter trade. Lack of double coincidence of wants. What do I mean by lack of double coincidence of wants? It's difficult to find someone in need of what the buyer is selling. And has what the buyer wants. For instance, if someone wanted goats for beans, they had to spend many days looking for someone with beans for them to exchange them for goats. Another point was indivisibility of some items. Some items can hardly be divided into small portions, hence limiting small transactions to take place. For instance, an individual with a goat finds it hard to exchange it with a hen because a goat weighs more value, and you couldn't just divide it just to get a small portion of what you want. So that indivisibility was a disadvantage to the people. Then difficulty in transactions of bulky commodities or items. Some items were extremely heavy and bulky to move from one place to another in the process of looking for buyers. So this was really difficult for the transactions to take place because it was very difficult to carry the bulky goods from one place to another looking for a buyer who wants that commodity. Then perishability of some items. Some products are highly perishable and hence difficult to store. This limits future transactions. So the transactions of such goods were supposed to be done immediately to prevent them from going bad. Difficulty in valuing commodities. It's hard to determine the value of one commodity in terms of the other without thinking about money. Therefore, some parties in the exchange cheat each other. For instance, we can take, let me say, a goat for a cow. That was clearly cheating a friend. And then, owing to these above coins of barter trade, a general acceptable medium of exchange was developed, and that is money, the present form of money we have now, the paper notes and the coins. I'm sorry, but I don't have the physics link or the passcode. I think you can ask your friends to help you with that. Then on that note, let's go to the characteristics of good money. But before we start on the characteristics of good money, could you give me the synonyms or any words that could mean characteristics in the chat, please? Yes, features, that's good. Or other words that can mean characteristics. You can also add qualities. You can write them down. Qualities, traits, aspects, attributes, elements, features, characteristics, the traits. And when we are talking about characteristics, we must use words like must and should Then missing in your answers doesn't qualify for a mark. Yes, and also elements. Yes, that's fine. So the characteristics of good money. The first one being, it must be generally acceptable. This means that it should be approved by everyone in the country as the official legal tender. This is to ensure that it is accepted by everyone in the making the different transactions. This means that the money accepted in Kampala should be the money accepted in Lira or in Bara or Gulu. And then good money should be portable. Portability. One should be able to carry money from one place to another. It shouldn't be bulky to somewhere. And then good money must be divisible into smaller denominations so as to enable small transactions to take place. For instance, if you have a 50,000 shilling note, it's easily divisible into smaller notes. For example, you can have 10,000 shilling notes for a 50K, or a 50K should be divisible into smaller units. For example, the 2,000 shilling notes could make up a 50,000 shilling note. Yes. And then it should be stable in value. Money should maintain its value without it over appreciating or over depreciating. This is to maintain people's confidence and trust in the money. And then homogeneity. With money should be uniform throughout the country. That's to say, one denomination should be as good as others. For example, 1,000 shilling note should be similar to all the 1,000 shilling notes in the country. And then durability. Good money should be long-lasting. It should be made out of high-quality paper and metals, and this is to reduce the cost of replacing worn-out money. I was talking about durability, how money should be durable and should be made from it should be long-lasting, should be made out of high-quality paper and metals. This is to reduce the cost of replacing the worn-out money. And then cognizability, this money should be recognizable immediately. You see this money, you should know that that's a 1,000 shilling note, a 2,000 shilling note. It should be easily recognized. And for malleability, good money should be malleable. Malleability, this is the ease with which the printing authority prints money. This means that it should be easy to be printed. For homogeneity, what I meant by homogeneity is that good money should be uniform throughout the country. This means that a 1,000 shilling note you find in Kampala should be the same 1,000 shilling note you find in Bara or Gulu. And then for stability in value, good money should be stable. By this, it should maintain its value without it over depreciating or appreciating. For example, when I talk about it being stable in value, I mean the purchasing unit of money. Okay, the amount of goods and services a unit of money can buy. If it keeps over appreciating or depreciating, people lose their confidence in the money. Let's also look at the functions of money. Money is a medium of exchange. Money makes it possible to determine value of goods and services to be exchanged. This facilitates the day-to-day transactions because money is used to buy goods and services. And then money is a unit of account. Money permits pricing of goods and services. It enables accounting and auditing the businesses and services and business transactions, pardon. In every bookkeeping, for example, accounting, it will be difficult if we didn't have money because all information is classified in money form. That makes it easy to count books. And then also money, it is a standard measure of value. Or we could say it stores value and wealth. Money makes it easy for people to store their wealth in money terms. For example, if I have a plot of land, I can convert it by selling it for 5 million. That means my plot of land is worth 5 million shillings. So it's a standard measure of value. Sorry, it stores the value. And then it is a standard of deferred payment. Modern economies are built on credit transactions. You buy, for example, nowadays you can buy goods and promise to pay later, and this is only able to happen because we have the present form of money today. I hope you've understood all the functions of money. If you have any question, you can write it in the chat. Yes, Anna, which point didn't you understand and the functions of money? It is a unit account. It is a unit of account. Is that the point you want me to repeat? Okay. It is a unit of account. What I mean by that is that money permits pricing of goods and services. It enables accounting and auditing to take place. For example, when we are counting books or bookkeeping, it's easier to keep records in money form. It's easier to keep the record because of the money we have right now. And then for deferred payment, what I meant by deferred payment is that you can actually be able to purchase a good without you immediately paying for it because of the present day money you can buy, and then you say you send it later. For example, mobile money you purchase, then you can pay later using mobile money or through the bank. It's for future transactions. I hope I have helped you on the standard of deferred payment. Okay. So on that note, you should be able to answer the questions like what are the characteristics of good money or what are the functions of money. And then we can go ahead to look at value of money. Before I proceed to the value of money, is there anything you haven't yet understood from the slide before? So by yes, we mean we proceed to the value of money. Oh, okay. Okay, for the part of homogeneity, what I meant by good money, other quality is homogeneity or good money. We could say good money should be uniform throughout the country. That is to say, one denomination should be as good as the others. For example, a 1,000 shilling note should be the same everywhere you go. And let me say it like this: a 1,000 shilling note should be similar to all the 1,000 shilling notes used in the country. They shouldn't differ. It's the same paper notes. And then for the deferred payment, what I meant by the deferred payment is when you want to carry out a transaction, but you don't have the money on you right now. So you can make the transactions in future, but you can take the commodity that you want. For example, deferred payment, you can use it for future payment. We can use mobile money where we can pay for the goods later on, but when you've already ordered what you want. For example, you buy goods and then you promise to pay back in the future. Is that better? Okay, thank you very much. I think we can proceed to the value of money. Is that fine? Okay. So another subtopic in money and banking is value of money. Value of money refers to the amount of goods and services a unit of money can buy, or we could just say the purchasing power of money. For instance, if the volume of goods and services is big from a fixed amount of money, then the value of money is said to be high. That means that if a unit of money are used to purchase more goods and services, then its value is high. But if a unit of money purchases less of a commodity, then the value of that money is low. And then there are certain factors that influence the value of money. These include the rate of inflation, the demand for goods and services, the demand for money, the monetary policy, the velocity or circulation of money. First, let's begin with price levels or rate of inflation. You know, inflation, it is the persistent increase in the general price level of goods and services. So when there's an increase in the prices of goods and services, the demand for those goods is low. That means the unit of money used to purchase the goods So a unit of money, since the prices of goods will be high, a unit of money will purchase less commodities. Thus, the value of money will be low since less of the commodities are being purchased for a unit of money. But then the vice versa. However, if the price levels of goods and services are low, then that means a unit of money can buy more of a commodity. Thus, the value of money will be high. And then the demand for goods and services. A high demand for goods and services influences prices upwards, hence lowering the money value. This question is two-sided. If you see a word that says factors that influence, wherever you see influence, just know it's a two-sided question. So you're supposed to give both sides. So back to the point of demand for goods and services. A high demand for goods and services influences prices upwards. But then this lowers the money value because when the demand of goods is high, the suppliers will increase the prices of those goods. Therefore, the people will be able to purchase less goods for a unit of money. Yes, Patience, you can unmute. I thought someone had a question. Okay, let's proceed to the demand for money. A high demand for money influences prices upwards, especially for transaction and speculative purposes. And this lowers the value of money. However, a low demand for money tends to influence prices downwards, thus increasing the value of money. I hope you've understood that point. Then for monetary policy, we shall look at monetary policy as a subtopic of its own. But monetary policy is a deliberate attempt by the government through the central bank to regulate the amount of money in circulation so as to attain the desired development goals. And the monetary policy is restrictive and expansionary. By restrictive, it reduces the money supply in the country. And by reducing the money supply, it increases the money value. Because the money will be scarce. Those are some of the characteristics of good money. Good money should be scarce. And when it's scarce, it increases the money value. The second point was the demand for goods and services. A high demand for goods and services influences prices upwards, hence lowering the money value. By this, when the demand for goods is high, the prices become high because the suppliers increase the prices because they know you want to buy the commodities. And when the prices are high, that means a unit of money that is used to purchase commodities can only purchase low levels of that commodity. And remember, for the value of money depreciates whenever a unit of money purchases less of the commodity. I think you've understood. I hope you've understood that part. And then also, we want you to repeat the explanation for demand for money. In demand for money, we wanted another explanation. A high demand for money influences prices upwards, especially for transaction and speculative purposes. For example, if there's high demand for money, that means for transaction, that means I work with my money in cash because I have some day-to-day things to buy, or for speculative purposes. For speculative purposes, I can keep the money for oh, sorry, it was muted. Demand for money, once an explanation again. A high demand for money influences prices upwards, especially for transaction and speculative purposes. And this lowers the money value. This is because people work with more money for transactional motives. These are the day-to-day things that we purchase. Can you hear me? Oh, okay, then the monetary policy, a restrictive monetary policy, as I said, the deliberate attempt by the government through the central bank to regulate the amount of money in circulation. And this is done through the restrictive and expansionary policy. The restrictive is where it reduces the money supply, hence increasing the money value, while an expansionary monetary policy increases money supply, hence reducing the money value. For restrictive, when it reduces the money supply, that means people who have, that means the money that means there will be a low level of supply of money, which leads to a decrease in the prices of goods and services, which leads to a rise in the value of money. But then for expansionary, when there is high level of supply of money, it leads to excess demand of goods and services, since many people have lots of money, so there is an increase in the demand for the goods and services, and this leads to an increase in the general price levels. When there is an increase in demand, there is an automatic increase in the prices of goods and services by the suppliers to make profits. And this would lead to a fall in the value of money. And then for the velocity of circulation of money, the higher the rate of velocity or circulation of money, the higher the money supply, and hence low money value. While the lower rate of velocity or circulation of money, the lower the money supply, and hence a higher money value. When the velocity or circulation of money is high, there will be an increase in the supply of money in a country, which will lead to excess demand of goods and services, and this will automatically lead to an increase in the price levels of goods and services, and this reduces the money value. Okay, for monetary policy, remember monetary policy, I said it is the deliberate attempt by the government through the central bank to regulate the amount of money in circulation. And this could be done through the restrictive or the expansionary policy. By restrictive, we are reducing the money supply in the country. And when we reduce the money supply in the country, it leads to a fall in the aggregate demand for goods and services, which leads to a decrease in the general price level of goods and services, thus leads to a high value of money. I hope you're clear with that. Is it now fine? The monetary right. We are going to do some activity. But before we do the activity, if you have any question, you could write it in the chat. And if you don't have any questions, you could write in the chat that you don't have. If there are any more points you want to add on, you can write in the chat. We can brainstorm some more factors that determine the money value. These are not the only factors. There are more factors. Okay. Let me add some points. You could write this point: the government policy of revaluation and devaluation. Under the devaluation policy, the government deliberately reduces the amount of money in circulation. And when the money in circulation has been reduced, this leads to a fall in aggregate demand, which leads to a decrease in the general price levels of goods and services, which raises the money value. While for the revaluation policy, the government deliberately increases the amount of money in circulation. This will lead to an increase in the aggregate demand for goods and services, which leads to an increase in the price levels of the goods and services, thus leading to a fall in the value of money. And then you can also add your friends more factors if you have. So there is also the point of availability of goods. So as given to us by Anna, or we could also call it the availability of goods or the level of transaction. A high level of transactions makes goods more available, therefore increasing the money value. Another point for the government policy of revaluation and devaluation policy. For the devaluation policy, the government deliberately reduces the amount of money in circulation. And when the amount of money in circulation is reduced, it leads to a fall in aggregate demand for goods and services. And this leads to a decrease in the general prices of goods and services. Whereas for the revaluation policy, where the government deliberately increases the amount of money in circulation, it leads to a high demand for the goods and services in the country, which increases the prices of goods and services, thus lowering the money value. Is the point now fine? If the point is fine, may I proceed to another subtopic? Because time is going, we're left with only 1 hour. So the next topic we are going to look at is demand for money, or we could call it liquidity preference. And by this, I mean the desire to hold money to hold wealth or assets in cash form. With demand for money, people have the urge to have money in cash form or near cash form other than investing it. Demand for money we could also call it liquidity preference, and then liquidity is the ease to hold the money in cash form or wealth in cash form. Or sorry, the assets or wealth in cash form, not money, but then the wealth or assets in cash form. And why is liquidity desired? Sorry. Liquidity is desired for three motives. First being the day-to-day transaction. Secondly being the holding money in cash form for unexpected events, which is the precautionary motive. And then holding money to earn more money through speculation. We shall look further into that when we are looking at Keynesian theory of demand for money. But then the demand for money is influenced by many factors. And these include the level of transactions, the interest rate, the price levels, the income levels, investment climate, the knowledge of banking facilities, level of speculation, the nature of distribution of commercial banks. Firstly, the level of transactions. A high level of transactions by people leads to high liquidity preference. At the level of transactions, a high level of transactions by the people leads to high liquidity preference. This is because there is much need to hold money in so as to have the day-to-day transactions needed for survival. This means that if there is a lot you need to buy for the, I could call it the transactional motive, the daily transactions you make in life, there will be a high liquidity preference or a high demand for money because there are many transactions you need to make. However, low levels of transactions by people lead to low liquidity preference. This is because there is no need to hold money for the day-to-day transactions. And then for the interest rate, a high interest rate acts as an incentive for people to earn much from their money, which encourages them to save. We could give an example of S.6 here, where people invest their money in S.6 and make interest after a given period of time. So if the interest rate is high, this interest rate, the percentages given attract people to either invest or not invest. So when the interest rates are high, it will attract people to invest so that their money multiplies or they make profits. Therefore, it will lead to a low liquidity preference. However, if there is a low interest rate, it increases the level of liquidity preference. Yes, Wamona? Yes, Wamona, you can talk.
Excuse
Yes.
me, madam.
Yes.
I need like the issue of income levels. I did not understand very well. Income levels.
Oh, okay. Let me explain it again. Though I hadn't yet talked about income levels, I was still on the interest rate. Let's look at the income levels. A high level of income among people leads to low liquidity preference since they easily invest their money elsewhere to earn interest both in the short and in the long run. However, people with low income levels, they tend to hold their money in cash form or near cash form because of the daily transactions they make. And then for the price levels, general price levels, a high price level leads to high liquidity preference as people tend to hold much money so as to enable meet their needs. However, as prices stabilize, the level of liquidity preference tends to fall as people need less money to meet their needs. Yes, Namara? You can unmute. I think you can unmute. Yes, Namara?
Open for me. Understand.
Pardon?
I would like for you to read the last sentence.
Of what point? Namara, we can't hear you. Probably a yes.
Yes, thank you, madam. I would like to understand more on the level of transactions. Thank you.
Namara, what was your question again?
I about that level of transactions that there's
Oh, okay.
yeah.
For the level of transactions, when there are high level of transactions by the people, that means when the people are making the daily transactions, buying goods that they need for survival, there will be an increase. Sorry, there will be a high demand for money in an economy. Because of the daily transactions they need to make, so they need to hold their cash. So they need to hold their wealth in cash form or near cash form with them for the daily transactions. But if the level of transactions are low, then it leads to a low liquidity preference, since there is no need for the daily transactions needed for carrying out, since there is no need or purpose for carrying out the daily transactions. Is that a better explanation? Yes, Provia, is that a better explanation for the transactions? Have you? Okay. Now for the investment climate, provision of investment incentives, for example, the subsidies or the tax holidays in an economy, leads to low liquidity preference as people invest their money in different economic activities to earn more profits. However, if there is limited provision of the investment incentive, it leads to high liquidity preference. Oh, I'm back, sorry. Yes, Namara or Emma, any of you can unmute and ask.
Now you have talked about the investment climate. I was
Yes,
trying to it like with political stability. Can we connect also political stability to investors, something like that?
but that will be a different point. I think it will be better if you don't mix them up. Yes, Namara, you can unmute. Yes, Namara, what's your question? I'm going to send you the notes of money and banking after the lesson. Okay, the next point is knowledge of banking facilities. If there is a high awareness of the banking facilities, it will lead to low demand for money because people keep their money in the banks. They do not stay with the money. They don't stay the money with themselves because they know about the banking facilities, they know about the investment, they know about the security, the interest rate offered by the banks. Therefore, they would prefer to keep their money in the banks rather than hold it at cash. However, the ignorance of people about banking facilities leads to a high demand for money because it makes people to hold their cash, especially when they feel that they have to go through the hassle to bank or to withdraw their money. That's a high liquidity preference. And then for the level of speculation, a high level of speculation in securities with high interest leads to low liquidity preference as speculators invest their money in securities with low interest rate. Sorry. Sorry on that, for the level of speculation, when there is high level of speculation among the people, it will lead to low liquidity preference, since they easily invest their money elsewhere at under interest both in the short and in the long run. For example, people can invest their money in the treasury bills and bonds so as to earn the profit. But if the levels of speculation in securities, but if there is no level of speculation in securities with low interest rate, it leads to high liquidity preference as speculators prefer to have their own money in cash form rather than investing it in securities where there are no interest or profits. And I hope you've all understood that part for level speculation. If there is any question on the level speculation, you could raise up your hand or write it in the chat. Or any other factor determining liquidity preference. You could send your link. You could send me your link because I don't think I'm in your group so that I can send you the notes. You could send me the WhatsApp link in that chat so that I send you the notes. Yes, you can unmute and ask your question. Techno Spark 4, you can unmute on Namara.
Yes.
Yes, Techno's back 4. You can raise, you're raising your hand. You can ask the question. Yes, you can unmute. I'll send you the notes. Thank you for the WhatsApp link. Rohan, yes. Yes, Rohan, you can unmute and ask the question. Or I can, let me go to the last part. As he's still preparing himself, the nature of distribution of commercial banks. A high level or the, let me say the high level of distribution of commercial banks. Here again, it's the nature distribution of commercial banks. If there is an even distribution of commercial banks, it leads to low liquidity preference because people know how to use the banks because of the way they, I beg your pardon, when there is an even distribution of commercial banks in the society, people have knowledge about the facilities at the bank. Thousand, the nature distribution of commercial banks. If there is even distribution of commercial banks in an area, people will have knowledge on banks and people will know how to use the banks, therefore they'll keep their money in the banks. However, if the nature distribution of commercial banks is very low, or we could call it the level of development of financial institutions like the commercial banks, it will lead to high liquidity preference because of the banking inconveniences, because the banks are far apart, therefore people will prefer to keep some money at hand because the distance which the banks will be far. If you have any other factor of liquidity preference, you can add it to the chart. Or any other question about these factors. Sunny, could you explain to us that point, the degree of uncertainty in an economy, of how it is a factor of liquidity preference? Age differences is wrong. It's not a factor of liquidity preference. Yes, Tony, you're free to unmute.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Like there, the degree of uncertainty in an economy, like high degree of uncertainty about the future in terms of currency, famine, sicknesses. And then on the other hand, since money to offset such events. Hello.
Oh, thank you very much, Tony. Yes, Provia, you're free to unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself. Yes, Provia, you're free to ask your question. You can unmute yourself. Is there any question or definition you'd like to ask in the things we have covered so far? You could write it in the chat.
Yes, madam.
Yes, you can ask your question.
I wanted to suggest another point, and is
Yes, you
level
can.
of development of banking facilities.
I think that I could be struck with the nature of distribution of commercial banks. But that's a very nice point. Thank you very much, Pravya. Yes, Halima.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I have questions for you. If you're asked what are the determinants of what are the factors that influence liquidity preference, one thing that we are supposed to use when you're asked about the factors that determine or influence, first thing you're supposed to note is that it's supposed to be two-sided. The second thing is that we use high and low whenever you're asked about the determinants that influence the determinants or the factors. When you're asked about determinants and influence, we use high or low. We should never use anything like increase or decrease. Am I clear? Because that will cost you marks. We only use increase or decrease when the question is asking for change or the question has increase or decrease in it. But other than that, if it's factors to determine or influence, we use high and low. And then I have a question for you. What is the role of money in an economy? You could raise your hand or write in the chat. The roles of money in an economy. Are you free to unmute?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, money encourage savings and investments.
Yes, very good. Yes, Provia, another row of money. Yes, thank you, Anna. Another thing, do not confuse the function of money with the row of money. There are two different things. So if you say it is a unit of an account, it's wrong because that's its function, not its row. Provia, measure of value is a function of money, not a row of money.
So medium of exchange.
Medium of exchange is a function of money, not a row of money. Yes, macrography, that's fine. Yes, Anna, that's fine. Yes, Blessing, you can unmute. Yes, this is very correct for distribution of income among factor owners. Blessing, you can now unmute.
I just have a question on the difference between a role and a function. I don't understand the difference between, just in the yeah, basically.
Oh, okay. Okay, for a row, it specifies the position of what that thing is supposed to be. For example, for money, the specific position that it does. Well, for a function, it's the actions that it does with the positions. I don't know if you can understand it that way. Any other question? Because we have covered so far for this lesson. If you have any question or any definition, you can ask. Yes, Emma. For the definition of the legal tender, it's the money which, according to the law, must be accepted in making transactions in a country at a given period of time. And then the next lesson will be on Monday for economics.
Excuse me, madam.
Yes?
What if you want to ask questions in different sectors?
Like, which one?
Like for example, today we are handling money and banking.
Yes.
But what if you have a question, for example, in demand?
You can ask, yes.
I have this question about the difference between agricultural modernization and agricultural mechanization.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, the person who was asking about agriculture modernization and mechanization, the difference. For modernization, agriculture modernization is the improvement of the agriculture sector from the traditional or the subsistence production to the commercialized high-yielding agriculture. Well, mechanization refers to the extensive use of machinery in the farm production activities, thereby reducing the amount of labor input necessary to produce a given level of output. Let me write it in the chat. Probably you're free to unmute yourself.
Madam,
Yes.
I would like to understand more on labor-intensive technology and capital-intensive technology.
Oh, okay. Let me first write down this definition in the chat and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then there's a question about the capital intensive and labor intensive. For labor intensive, these are production techniques that employ relatively more units of labor than other factors of production, especially capital. While for capital intensive, it can also be called labor saving or 1,000 pound technology. This is the production method that employs relatively more units of capital other than other factors of production, especially labor. And then I'm seeing a question about cost push inflation. Yes, Praise, what do you want to know about cost push inflation?
Excuse me, madam.
Yes.
About the answers we sent about roads of money, were they all correct?
Some were correct except the parts for medium of exchange and also unit of account. Those were functions, not rows. If you don't mind, I can read for you other rows as you write them down.
Okay, madam, thank you.
Madam, I would like to know about the difference between the long run and the short run, because when you're explaining the determinants of liquidity preference, when you're explaining level of speculation, I heard you talking about long run and short run. More clarification about them.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The roles of money in an economy.
Yes.
It encourages specialization. It promotes commercial production. It promotes the development of credit markets for borrowing and lending. And then it promotes savings. It encourages hard work by individuals in order to improve their standards of living. And it makes it possible for the government to influence economic activities in a country. And then it enables the distribution of income among factor owners. It was already given. Yes, those are some of the roles. And then the other question about the level of speculation, right? Where I talked about how the high level as a determinant for demand for money, where I said the high level speculation in securities with high interest lead to low liquidity preference as the speculators invest their money in the treasury bonds and bills. The treasury bonds and the bills are the long and the short run. In the short term, to earn profits. However, the low level of speculation in securities with low interest rate leads to high liquidity preference, as speculators prefer to have their money in cash form rather than investing it in securities. I would like to know what you didn't understand by that point of level speculation. The person who asked.
Okay, madam, I've got you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then the person who was asking about, let me see, any other question? Is this the only question?
Yes, madam. I wanted to know, I had one of my colleagues, he was talking about the importance of money in an economy. Then he talked about encouraging savings and investments. So, madam, more clarification about this point.
Or the part for it encourages savings, this is through investment. For example, when you invest in the bank, you're indirectly saving your money.
kusoma mu katabo kikutegeera kuba amazima dino point wogo osomesa bino ebintu amazima birinakuba ku mutwe byolina ebintu byendidi mu mutwe ngateekanga agema kitabo kyova mbitamu bino nosina kubona okunona akawanti nokozesa kino kinakuba period.
Any other question? No, it's already time up. If you have any other question before we end the meeting. What question are you talking about for techniques? Please clarify more on that. About cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is about the persistent increase in the general price levels that arise out of an increase in the costs of production. Did you just want? Okay, I think I've answered you. And one for labor and capital intensive. Labor intensive can also be called capital saving or the £1 technology. Labor intensive techniques. These are the production techniques that employ relatively more units of labor other than other factors of production, especially capital. While for capital intensive or the labor saving, this is the production method that employs relatively more units of capital than other factors of production, especially labor. You're welcome. Is that all? And then we end the lesson. a closing prayer and we end the lesson. Yes, Provia.
Let's humble ourselves for the prayer. Lord Father, we thank you for this great lesson. We thank you for this time. Thank you for our madam. We thank you for the things that we have studied, Father. Lord Father, we call you at these times. Let whatever we have been taught be put into our minds forever. We have prayed and believed through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.